So good morning, everyone, and thank you very much for the invitation. My name is Erez Galonska. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Infarm, one of the world's fastest growing vertical farming companies. And today I would like to talk about our vertical vision and the challenges and opportunities I see for our growing industry. In the next slide, for those of you who don't know Infarm, let me introduce us briefly. As of today, we are operating in 10 countries, cultivating millions of plants a month and growing. We have more than 500,000 square feet of growing centers distributed across cities around the world. We are providing super fresh, premium produce and local produce in affordable prices, 365 days a year. And our vision is to help cities and regions to become more self-sufficient, more resilient in their food production. In the next slide, you can see that the headlines suggest it is a very much needed vision these days. The last 2 years have demonstrated further how fragile our food supply chain is. If the war in Ukraine has taught us anything, is that food security or nutritional security, and of course, food self-sufficiency are serious threats in our world today. This is in addition to the food shocks linked to the COVID-19 pandemic and the increase of severe weather events driven by climate change. It is clear to everyone in the room that we need to change and adapt to the new reality. We urgently need to find better ways to produce and distribute food that are both climate resilient and secure. Next slide, please. For decades, industrial agriculture has had an abundance of land and water resources. It optimized for yield and cost. It accepted harmful fertilizers and pesticides to improve crops. It cost us in soil degradation and food that travels thousands of miles, almost a billion tons becoming waste each year. Looking at the numbers, the environmental impact is untenable and unacceptable. Currently, 70% of global fresh water is used for agriculture. Meanwhile, almost 40% of the world's population lives in areas with high to very high water shortages or scarcity. 50% of the world's habitable land has already been converted to agriculture use, and the growth of our global population will lead to even more deforestation, biodiversity loss, and soil degradation. We also face a huge waste problem with about 17% of total global food production is wasted every year. And lastly, up to 28% of global greenhouse gas emissions are caused by the food industry. In the next slide, you can see that all of this ultimately means our lives, health, well-being, and livelihoods are at risk. To state the obvious, to the people in the room, we simply cannot afford to produce, distribute, and eat the same way for the next 50 years. The UN predicts that by 2050, we will need to increase production by 70%. And as our friend from Wageningen University concluded, farmers will need to produce more food in the next 40 years than we have in the last 8,000 years combined. It's a grand challenge. So unless we reinvent our food system and find new efficient and sustainable ways to produce food, we won't be able to make it back to the safe operating zone within our planetary boundaries, as you can see in the picture. So we must give nature some breathing space as we grow our food. Now, agricultural technology, controlled environment agriculture, and vertical farming in particular is enabling that and many new ways of producing food never imagined before. In the next slide, hopefully it can turn the video. You can see that, like our friends sitting in the room from the other vertical farming companies, we decided to embrace the many challenges and lead a farming revolution growing food in AI-controlled environment vertical farms that are up to 100 times more efficient than soil-based agriculture and are completely climate resilient. As part of the agriculture tech revolution, we see vertical farming promise to produce more food, a lot more food, with less resources, and ultimately decouple food production from environmental degradation. Also, vertical farming has the potential to provide food security in a world beset by climate shocks and economic downturns, and provide nutrition security by crashing supply chains and producing locally. In the next slide, I can talk to you about my belief. So I truly believe, and I'm convinced, vertical farming is a game changer. And we as an industry are at the very heart of the future of food. With the strong conviction, excellent research, the right amount of investment, and of course talent, and lastly, proper regulations, vertical farming has the ability to produce the entire spectrum needed for the human diet on the long run, from staples to the entire fruit and vegetable basket. Next slide, please. Important to say, we are all on a mission to feed people, but it's also an environmental mission. This summer, we published an impact vision paper, and I'm delighted that we have began working together as a collective to set standards and build the vertical farming industry for purpose. Please download if you haven't already and enjoy the read. Sads is also in the room. He's our Chief Impact Officer, and he would love to answer any questions you have on this paper. Now, the way I see it, vertical farming is bringing a new breed of purpose-led pioneers, but we can only achieve real change, credibility, and attention if we work together to shift our food systems and revolutionize the flawed food system. I truly believe in that. In the next slide, you can see that together we can address the big 4 impact areas: local production and urban farming, land use and biodiversity, which is a big one, water, which normally people underestimated, and of course, carbon and energy, which is the very big topic. Now, they in turn shape how we improve, innovate, and fulfill our ambitions and purpose. In the next slide, I put a summary. So coming together as an industry and collectively expressing our shared values in a joint identity and manifesto as we did is truly powerful. To my knowledge, I have never known an industry to do this before. As we push the boundaries of conventional thinking and practices, we are and we will continue to face the challenges. In the next slide, you can see some of the key areas where we can work together in order to overcome them and achieve our goals. The first one, raising our collective voice and ensuring that vertical farming is seen as one of the solutions to the many problems we face. The benefits of controlled environment agriculture and vertical farming should be reflected in governmental support measures such as financial incentives and tax relief, and deserve a place in governmental food strategies. Together, we can urge policymakers to recognize vertical farming as essential contributor to food security and climate resilience that does not compromise on climate and environmental protection. Second, significant financing and investment, of course, is needed, and government incentives, including tax, must change quickly to support our growth. Pushing for increasing access to renewable and low carbon energy sources, we need an even more science-driven approach and to embrace clean sources of low carbon energy such as nuclear energy. We are going to commit to global frameworks like science-based targets and B Corp. Now, beyond offsetting and carbon mitigation, rigorous measurements and transparency will be crucial to avoid misleading claims and greenwashing in our industry. Committing to setting science-based targets would be a significant step towards acknowledging and dealing with that topic. Lastly, regulation needs to evolve from new crop breeding techniques and organic regulation to reporting standards. For example, modifying frameworks such as science-based targets to make them fit for the next generation of solution in our food production. It's essential to keep in mind that right alongside the progress of our industry, vertical farming, we need to lead a step change and cultural awakening, if you like, across businesses, consumers, and governments alike. For that reason, we will be at COP27 in Egypt, where we will lead the efforts for the first ever food system pavilion to push these points and many others for our industry. So lots of work to be done here. In the last slide, I just want to say a few words. As a founder and CEO of a purpose-driven company, I have always been driving and advocating for the collective change of the current food system. I can say that we are at the tipping point of an agricultural revolution, facing a massive market demand and strong driving forces pushing for a change. If we join efforts and leverage each other's capabilities and advantages, we will play a crucial role in the future of humanity.